Hey guys, welcome back to National High School Football or NationalHSFB.com. I'm your host, Larry Godwin. You guys know my counterpart by now, Joe Mamone in the upper right-hand corner. Welcome back, Joe. And guys, back for a encore performance after a national championship performance last year is St. John Bosco head coach Jason Negro. Coach, welcome back to the program. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Larry. Appreciate you having me on your show today. And Joe, as always, it's good to see you. Happy birthday. I see you're still celebrating the 4th. Yep. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be a part of this program, and the outreach that you guys do for high school athletics is pretty special. And I'm just humbled to be a part of this.
Joe, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, Coach, we interviewed a little less than a year ago, probably in August, I would think, last year at the beginning of the season. What a whirlwind of a season it was. Tell us, in your best short version, what it was like to win a national championship in 2022. I mean.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's part of the expectations that we have here at Bosco in terms of what we want to try to accomplish. We start our season as soon as we come back from the Christmas break. So in January of 22. We knew we had a pretty good squad coming back. We had some young guys that were going to have to step up and make big plays. And we finally were going to have a situation where we had a quarterback. We're not flip-flopping guys. For the 2 previous years, we had to do that with Pierce Clarkson coming back as a senior. And we, had some guys that were stepping into the program in pretty vital roles. And we knew we had an opportunity if we could stay healthy and we could win some of the bigger games on the schedule and do some things right at the right time of the year, that we were going to have a pretty good opportunity and chance to do that. And being a part of the Trinity League is always going to put you in that situation because, Mater Dei is so nationally well known as well. And, depending on how that league game goes and what you can do with them, if you get to them in the playoffs or in the championship game like we were able to, it was just pretty satisfying for us to be able to avenge that loss. And the league game, which you were a part of, was super closely contested. I mean, it was a 10-7 ball game with about a minute and a half to go in the game. And either team had an opportunity to win it, and they popped one late when we were trying to strip the football. But you got to give them a lot of credit, and we were able to, 6-7 weeks later, avenge that loss in the Rose Bowl and ultimately beat Sarah from San Mateo up in the north, who was 14-0 coming into the game to win a state title. And that put us in position, because of the resume and what we were able to do in the non-league, put us in position to win a national title. And we're very thankful for that. And now, all of a sudden, we're here in 23 trying to run it back for the first time in our program's history. So we'll see what happens.
Coach, in my experience in football, it just never ends. Even though you had several great seasons, it never ends. So the grind's already started for you, right? So Joe alluded to that about this time last year, you were on this program. And I went back and watched that interview that we did with you back about a year ago. And you said that in 2019, you won a national championship, and you said that it validated, your words that you used were, it validated all the work that you've been doing up to that point. So in my mind, that's a way of saying the Bosco way proved itself in terms of preparing players, not only to excel at the high school level, but also to make a major impact day one when they get to college. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Oh, without question. I think the biggest thing is it's a standard. The Bosco Standard here now, the elevation of expectations over the last probably 10 years is incredibly high. And what it basically has done is anybody that comes into our program, whether, you're a parent, a player, a coach, we have set the bar, set the standard as to what our expectations are and the way that you need to be able to prepare, practice, play games, perform out there on the field. It's a standard that we're very, very proud of. We've built a culture here that's pretty special, and it constantly allows us to challenge our student athletes against some of the best teams in the country. And we're going to continue to do that. And I think that's the mindset that not only I have, as a head coach, but the administration shares in that as well, which is great for me because it allows me to do some pretty cool things and take our kids all over the country to play some, pretty remarkable opponents. And, my coaches believe it. Your staff believes it, the parents, the players, everybody that's associated with the program, the fan base, everybody has, this elevated expectation of what our program should be. And like I said, it's a Bosco standard, just like what you say, and it's a culture. And we're going to continue to try to thrive off of that to build into the future as well.
Hey, Larry, I want to review Coach's schedule now, especially the first 5 games, the non-region games. Coach, I think you would believe me or agree with me by saying that it's probably the toughest out-of-region schedule you've ever put together. Is that true? You think?
Yeah, without question.
Yeah. Just the 5 out-of-region games I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Joe, let me interrupt you here. Coach, and you and I were kind of talking about your crazy schedule with this upcoming season before Joe joined us on the screen. And I said, Coach, what were you thinking? Did you let Joe sweet talk you into this schedule?
I didn't let him sweet talk you, but I will have to say PGL helped out big time in helping us try to secure some opponents in this thing. It's a kind of a byproduct of the success that you have. The number of opponents that are in your pool that are potential, people that would play you it shrinks from year to year, especially when you have, the success that we have had. And we've got quite a few returners coming back. And I think people can just look up Max Preps and see, oh, you got 3 5-star guys on defense that are all returning from a year ago that are going to be 4-year starters for us. So it is a crazy schedule, but, it's a byproduct of our success. Yeah. And, one of the things that I think that you can never say about our program is that we're going to duck opponents or we're not going to go out there and try to allow people to have what we've been able to experience. If you want to win a national title, you have to go out there and be willing to put yourself out there and to play people across the region. And if you're able to, be fortunate enough to win those games, then you're going to be in that discussion at the end of the season. We know it's mythical. You can't, unless you have a tournament, it's a mythical, situation. But if you want to be in that discussion, you have to go out there and challenge yourself and give others an opportunity to play you as well. I know that St. Francis is they're on, on a quick path to try to win a title. Well, how are you going to do it? Well, go beat Bosco and go beat Mater Dei. Then you'll be able to say that's what they're doing. So you got to give those guys a lot of credit. Or, the guys down at Thomas Aquinas, Coach Harriet and those guys, they finished a couple of years undefeated, but maybe they didn't get to have an opportunity to play a Bosco or a Mater Dei or a St. Francis. Well, now they do. So you go beat those guys. Now you're in that discussion. So it is a crazy schedule, but it's a byproduct of the success. And, we have to give people an opportunity to play us, just like they're giving us an opportunity to build a resume by playing them.
Hey, Coach, we started this company. We talked about this back in 2015. My first client ever was your sister school, Don Bosco Prep. My son was there. They were winning national championships and nobody wanted to play them. They couldn't even put together a 6 or 7 game schedule. Right. I started this company because of them. First game we ever put together was a home and home with Cincinnati Moeller. And now we have 400 teams that rely on us to find them games in crunch time or in general. So let's talk about let's go week by week. Friday, August 18th, you're hosting Liberty, Nevada. Great public school, probably the top public school out of Nevada. A couple of years ago, they actually beat Bishop Gorman. Correct. 2 or 3 years ago. Great program. Coach Morocco will play anybody, anywhere. I love working with him. Guy, schedules like a private, basically.
Right.
So you got that week 1 at home. Then you go to our partners down at the Broward versus the USA event, which is an unbelievable event. It's become the biggest and best event in our game. They just take care of all the teams tremendously. They get teams from all over America that come down to Fort Lauderdale. It's a 3-day event, 7 games over 3 days. You're playing at St. Thomas Aquinas on Saturday the 26th. Now, last time we spoke about a year ago, when I candidly ask you, what's the best memory you have of any out-of-state game? And that first game against STA, that was what you talked about. So you're going to have a second game against them. And the high school football world is especially looking forward to that. Any comments on playing STA again? Remind our fans how the first game went. That was the weather was horrible and it was low scoring. Remind everybody.
Well, I mean, anytime you have an opportunity to go across the country and play one of the marquee programs in all of high school football, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's going to test your skill set against some of the best coaches and some of the best talent, out there. And STA had a great team that year. We were coming off a state title. We finished 2 in the country in 2016. Bishop Gorman beat us actually with Tate Martell when he was a senior. They beat us. They finished 1, we finished 2 that year. And then so in 2017, we had to replace a lot. We went down to South Florida. like you said, I mean, it was like kind of the heels of Hurricane Henry or Harry, one of those big hurricanes down there. And we weren't even quite sure we were going to be able to play the game because there was so much rain. And then the whole game, it rained and it was just back and forth. It was a 3-3 game at the end of regulation. We missed some opportunities in the red zone, and they really couldn't get anything going offensively either. And went into overtime. Florida overtime rules are a little different than ours. Put the ball on the 10-yard line, and you got 4 plays to score. And they were able to score on their 3rd or 4th down, and we stopped short of the goal line and lost the game. I think it was 9-6 or 9-3. But at the end of the day, you got to give them a lot of credit. And we became a better football team as a result of that, and we had to, find our way. And then a couple weeks later, we went and played St. John's out of DC in DC. So we were able to come back and win that game. So it made us better. And I think at the end of the day, you only hope that your team can learn from these experiences, and being able to go back to down there and play STA in their home stadium in the Broward County Showcase is something that it's going to be a great experience for our kids. And I'm just excited to be able to provide that for the entire Bosco community.
And Coach, I forgot that both of those games were away back then.
Both East Coast.
You went to Florida and DC. Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's go to week 3, a game near and dear to my heart. So Coach called me up about a month and a half ago. Unfortunately, a team out of Florida that he was playing, a team out of Miami had to cancel on him. It was tough. I mean, at this point in the year, there's not many openings. Right. So I did what I do for everybody. I sent out a scheduling alert to all 400 plus teams in my community, and lo and behold, the Friendship Academy out of the DC area said, Joe, we're interested. Can you hook us up with Coach, and let's see if we can make it happen? And in about, less than a week, the contract was signed. And so on Friday, Labor Day weekend, September 1st, you're going to be hosting Friendship Academy. Yep. Coach Hunter's bringing down his team there. They have, I forget the player's name, but they have a 5-star, really good player, one of the best in the Northeast that's going to be playing you. So we're looking forward to that. And then Larry, a week later, Friday night, the 8th, the game that so many people have been waiting for. Coach knows I've been trying to get him to play this game for a couple of years now. They're hosting St. Francis Academy with Michael Van Buren, one of the best quarterbacks for SFA, and all that they bring. It's one of the best teams in the Northeast. Not only do they draw from Maryland, but they're in that corridor, that DMV corridor, where they can get kids from Delaware, Virginia, Maryland. So it's a really, really good regional Catholic school. A lot of people don't realize the school is 195 years old.
Right.
It was opened in 1828. It was the first. It's still to this day the oldest predominantly Black Catholic high school in America. Yeah. So everyone's looking forward to that. And then he's going away, but he's not just going away, Larry. He's going to freaking Hawaii to play Kahuku. Now, Kahuku's really good. When St. Francis was number 1 last year for a few weeks, they almost beat them. St. Francis had to go to Hawaii, and it was like St. Francis had to win it in like the last 30 seconds of the game at like 4 a.m. I was up watching the game. It was literally 3:30 in the morning when the game ended, my time. So, and St. Francis and Kahuku, to note, they're the only 2 teams in America that are scheduling during the regular season, both Bosco and Mater Dei. Both of those 2 teams are playing the 2 Trinity League powers. So hats off to them. That game's on Saturday, the 16th. And Coach, how many times have you been to Hawaii? Is this something you've done frequently? I don't remember.
Yes, this will be our 3rd trip to Hawaii. We went in 2014 and played St. Louis. Tua Tagovailoa was the quarterback for St. Louis that year, and we had Josh Rosen. So 2 NFL quarterbacks actually played in that game, got to play in Aloha Stadium. And then we went back in 2019 to play Mililani. Those guys, Coach Rod York, phenomenal coach. Those guys are not afraid to play anybody. They played Mater Dei here last year. We played them out there in 2019. Got to give big props to the Mililani program. Coach Rod York's one of my favorite guys in this business. And then now this is our 3rd time. So we try to go about every 3 years or so because, I don't want to go back to back with our kids, try to give them different experiences. So, these kids that are going in 23 have never been there. But if you've ever seen, we're playing 2 pretty historical high school football programs in a row. We play St. Francis as you said, 195-year-old, predominantly all black, Catholic high school out of the East Coast, out of the Northeast. And then we go back to play Kahuku, and they are probably one of the greatest fan bases you could ever find. They'll shut down the island. The North Shore of Hawaii is pretty incredible, small community. And that place is going to be an absolutely, bonkers environment for our kids to go play in. And it's going to be super challenging. As you saw how tough it was for St. Francis to go win that game there last year. Like you said, Kahuku should have won the game, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
Francis snuck away with it at the very end. But at the end of the day, it's about providing our kids, cool experiences. And that's what we're all about here at Bosco. And to be able to go to Florida, a couple of weeks later, go to Hawaii, 6,000 miles apart, go 2 high school football games. I'm just blessed to be in a program that allows me to do it. And kids that are, energetic enough and tough enough to be able to go do that.
Now let's talk about your region, your league games now. So give us a quick rundown of the Trinity League this year. Obviously, everyone knows about the two biggies, you and Mater Dei. A couple of years ago, Servite was really good with that senior class they had. What are you looking forward to? Is any team starting to creep up to be a close number 3 behind you two?
Well, I mean, I think the gap has completely, started to shrink a little bit, and you got to give credit to the rest of the programs in the league. The one thing is there's 3 brand new head coaches in the league, so that's going to be a little unique as well. Bruce, longtime guy at Mater Dei. I don't think much is going to change at Mater Dei. They've kept everything pretty much status quo, so that's not a big change. But there's a new coach at J. Sarah. He's a college guy, so I think they're going to be on the up and up. I also think that what they're going to do at Servite, they hired another college coach to come in there and try to, get that program, back. They had a tough year last year after that really good senior class moved on. But I think they're going to do some good things. And I think you got to really keep an eye out for what Coach Ruse is doing over there at Santa Margarita, and then what Coach Sherman is doing at Orange Lutheran. Those 2 teams, have obviously taken that next step. They're trying to close that gap. And I think on any given night in the Trinity League, a team can beat another team. Even last year, Mater Dei struggled as good as a football team as they were. They only beat J. Sarah 21-14, in a game that kind of went back and forth. And so anything can happen in this league. These kids are all highly talented. They're really well coached. The league just as a whole elevates when that 6th week of the season hits, and everybody is kind of out for us in Mater Dei, but you can't sleep on anybody. These guys are too well coached. They're too well prepared. Kids are too prideful, have a lot of skill sets. So, I mean, it's a monster of 5 weeks in a row. And then you got to get into the Division I playoffs here in the Southern section. Yeah. I think it's some of the best football in the country. And I think that's one of the reasons why over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been us or Mater Dei that has won a national title. Because not only are we beating the teams here in California, but we're also beating these nationally ranked teams all over the country as well. And if you want to be in that conversation, again, you got to go be willing to play these people, and you got to beat them when you have the chance.
Hey, Larry, one more question from me. So Coach was gracious enough last year for the first Mater Dei game. It was actually an away game for him. Mm-hmm. He gave our nationalhighschoolfootball.com full access. We met at the equipment handout earlier in the day. Then we went to the team mass, and then we were able to drive behind the bus to the game and had sideline access the whole night. It was a tremendous experience that we had never experienced before. Coach, tell us and our listeners and our fans, tell us exactly what does that Mater Dei game mean every year to your school and your program?
Well, I think it's a great kind of litmus test as to what type of program that you're going to have. I mean, you have so many just talented athletes on the field at one time. It's virtually a college football game played with high school players, I think last year there was something like 52 players between both teams that were currently holding Division I scholarship offers. So it's just kind of a who's who in the Southern California region in terms of top football talent. And then, you got 2 staffs that are really talented as well. And then you have these crazy rabid fan bases, not only from the local standpoint, but the national standpoint. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had the New York Times come out and do a special expose on this matchup and the rivalry between the 2 teams. We also had 2 years ago, not ESPN, Sports Illustrated come out and did like a 6-page photo shoot of this game. So when you're talking about, you know, the New York Times, obviously here, the LA Times, Sports Illustrated, you know, the high school football, national HSFB coming out, PGL, all these Max Preps, everybody's covering this game. It just magnifies it that much more. And I think we always deliver. That's the other thing. You know, these two teams kind of punch each other in the face week in and week out. You know, one team will win one matchup, the other team wins the other matchup. And you just got great football. There's mutual respect that goes back and forth, you know, between the two programs. And, you know, lo and behold, I think we've built this thing into what it is. And hopefully if we can continue to, you know, to kind of go back and forth, it's going to keep that rivalry there. It's not like one team has won it 21 straight times. It wouldn't be a rivalry at that point. So we have to continue to beat up on each other and see what happens. And if we're able to do that, it's going to continue to garner the national attention that it has. And I'm just blessed that I have an opportunity to be a part of it. I know we don't win every game. That's ultimately the goal, but it's because of what they bring to the table that's allowed our program to be who we are today. And I'm thankful for that. And I thank Bruce for that as well.
Yeah. Hey, Larry, you know, when you watch a Laker game on TV all the time, you see the celebrities sitting courtside. Well, you had to see the celebrities at this game. You had me, obviously. you had Zach Pop from Max Preps standing next to Lincoln Riley, the head coach of USC. It was awesome.
Yeah, I think Chip Kelly was there that night. I mean, there was all kinds of people there. You know, we get constantly people reaching out from a celebrity standpoint to come and watch us play. We had Zion Williams at the first game 2 years ago. Zion Williamson from the Pelicans came out. He's one of the top basketball players in the NBA. Came out and watched the game. Quavo and Migos, those guys came to a modern day Bosco game to watch us. So it's kind of cool, you know, and it's just another way for us to build this rivalry and try to make it as great as it possibly can be.
And this year you're hosting.
Yes.
So it's even going to be more madness because your field your capacity isn't nearly as large as where we were, right? Where were we? Cerritos or Saddleback? Where were we?
We were at San Annibal.
San Annibal. All right,
just down the street from Modern Day. But here at Bosco, it is a little bit more
crazy.
It's going to be bonkers. Yeah, we'll have, you know, a crazy crowd. We'll hold those season. We don't even sell tickets to that game till the week of,
right?
You know, because it just gets so haywire.
Hey Joe, as you were talking to the coach about the schedule, and you were naming some teams, I did some quick math and geography and that kind of stuff. I wrote down 2,495 miles and an 11-hour plane ride to Hawaii. It's 2,706 miles to Fort Lauderdale. You know how many miles to Valdosta and Lowndes County? 2,322 miles. I'm just saying it's even closer for you, Coach.
Hey, I tell you what, that's one of the, I was talking to you earlier. It's one of the bucket list areas that we would love to come play, whether it's Colquitt County or Lowndes or Valdosta. You know, one of those great, just, you know, programs down there in the South that our kids can experience. You know, we got a safety that's committed to Georgia. We have a current offensive tackle that's probably going to start for the University of Georgia this year. That's out of our program, class of 22 kid. In Ernest Green. So we would love to come down there. They play such great football in that area, whether it's, you know, any of those programs, the Gwinnett County schools. And this is, I don't know a whole lot about the region, but I just know that they got some creatures that come out of there and they have some really good football that's being played. They're great coaches. Had an opportunity to see a couple of them at the All-American game this year. They beat up on us in that All-American game, but we'd love to bring a team down there. And expose our California kids to that type of football. And it's only a matter of time before we make it happen for sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to present that, you know, because we have every year we have our South Georgia versus the USA event. Last year it was South Georgia versus Florida. We had Deerfield Beach and American Heritage come up and play. And this year we have two teams from Carolina. We have the Christ School from Asheville, which is playing Lowndes, and we have the great Dutch Fork program that's playing Colquitt. So maybe next year I'll pitch it. Well, let's see what they say. I'll pitch a Georgia-California challenge. That would be awesome. Really would.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Now you got to do it, Coach. You got to do it in August because really, with your studded athletes, so I think the humidity is going to be our 12th man.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I tell you what. When 2017, when we played down there at STA, that weather, man. It was brutal. I mean, we played St. X in Ohio in August as well. That was miserable. So,
Yeah.
we just tell our kids that they're soft and they're just a bunch of surfing kids from California, and they get a little heated about that. And
Yep.
it never has seemed to bother us, knock on wood. But I think it does have an overall effect, on their performance later in the game. So we take a lot of pride in trying to condition our athletes from January on to get them ready. And we have to build depth, through the summer, because we know we can't rely on a guy to get 60, 70 snaps in a football game, especially playing some of these really talented kids. We got to build depth. And I think it motivates and it inspires our kids to work a little bit harder and try to get themselves ready for that type of experience.
Hey, Larry,
Absolutely.
Larry, last year they went down and played Allen in Allen, Texas.
Right.
And I sent Coach a little blurb of, there's like this local show of all these local sports writers or coaches or whatever, talking about how they had a chance of beating them because the Texas Heat, they could never survive the Texas Heat. And before you know it, what was the final score? 40,
Was it 45-0 or something like that?
No, 49-14 or something. I don't know.
52-14.
Yeah,
There you go.
Give me a break. I mean,
who's keeping track, Coach?
yeah, people forget it's kind of hot in Southern California too.
Yeah. Coach, I do have a more serious question for you. A while ago you said that, you have a byproduct of your success.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time the saying goes that everybody loves a winner, but life experience tells us that's not necessarily always true. There's usually like half the audience out there is rooting for you to fail, right? So you had such a successful season last year. You're probably going to replace a lot of players on that, especially the offensive side of the ball. So you're going to have some naysayers come into this season. How do you handle that? And how do you have your kids handle that?
Well, you're right. I mean, anytime you come off a year like we had last year and we were able to, win a national title, beat Mater Dei and Sarah in consecutive weeks, there's going to be attrition. We lost 33 seniors from last year's team, 20 of which went on to play college football at the division, let's say 1AA to Division I level. So that's a pretty big chunk of the performers. And we have to replace a lot, but we still have a really talented group coming back. And I think it's just the culture at which we built, that you always hear the cliche that, we don't rebuild, we reload,
right,
all that kind of stuff. We don't use that over here, but we do have a standard, like I talked about earlier, that our kids know that they have to try to uphold. And the alums and the guys that have moved on through the program are the ones that are their most biggest critics. So they're the ones that are going to say, hey, man, what our expectations are. What our program was able to do. Now, young guys, you got to come up and you got to keep that thing going. So we're able to hopefully being able to do it. We've done it consistently for the past about 11 or 12 years. But it's a challenge. You have to have kids step up in a big way. And there are a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people that are trying to poke holes in our program, try to poke holes in some areas, where we graduated a lot of talent and saying, Bosco's not going to be able to do this because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, then that kind of motivates us as coaches, and it motivates us as, players in those particular positions. Hey, see what they're saying about you. See what they think of you. Now what are you going to go do about it? Are you going to tuck your tail and run the other way? Or are you going to kind of pull your bootstraps up and go to work? And that's kind of the mentality that we have. We know that we have some areas that we have to improve upon. And some young guys are going to have to step up, like you said, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But it's a challenge. And, that's the greatest thing about high school sports is you never have the same team year after year. You're always having to replace. You're always having to bring in, new kids into the varsity level that's going to be able to go out there and to compete. And, those guys kind of motivate us. And, you can't take what is being said on social media because you're right, Larry, everybody tries to cut you down. Everybody would rather, instead of celebrating the success, they want to try to, neutralize you by cutting you down, trying to poke holes into your program and, have excuses on why you're good or you're not good. And we don't really focus on that. We kind of internalize all the things that we're doing here in our program. We know what we have to do to be successful, and we know who we are internally. And I'm good with that. And as long as our fan base is behind us and they're fired up for this upcoming season, then I'm going to roll with them.
Coach, let's talk about some of your ballers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at 247 right now. Your top 5 players, according to 247 Sports, are all on the defensive side of the ball. Right. Marcellus, Peyton, Kingston, Jason, Jordan.
Right.
I mean, tell us, is this going to be one of the best defenses you've ever had as a coach there?
I mean, it's going to be hard to I mean, you look at our one of our best defenses statistically of all time was the 2018 team. That's when DJ and Bryce were juniors. Yep. Bryce Young, at Mater Dei, and we had DJ here at Bosco. They were both juniors. That 2018 team was pretty remarkable. And then, flip it to 2019. I mean, who can argue that team? We were able to beat Bryce two out of 3 times. That during his career, at Bosco, we went 2-2 against Bryce. And I don't know how many people have done that throughout his career. Elijah Brown at Mater Dei has lost 1 high school football game as a starting quarterback, and that was to our defense. So defensively, I think we continue to push out a really good product. Again, those kids, are led by our defensive coordinator, Chris King, and his staff. Phenomenal coaching staff. One of the brightest minds in the entire high school football game. Is Chris, and what he's able to do has been a longtime D coordinator for me for the past 14 years. But it could be, and it's yet to be determined. I mean, we tell our kids that all the time. If you want to be considered one of the greatest, then you better go accomplish something. You can't just sit there and say, well, on paper, you're a 5-star and you're going to this school, or you're a 247, highly ranked guy. Well, that doesn't mean squat if you can't go out there and deliver and produce out there on the field against some of these great teams that we're going to have to play against. And luckily, they're going to have the opportunity to do that against Michael Van Buren from St. Francis. I mean, one of the top quarterbacks going to Oregon. That guy's talented. Okay, you want to go be considered one of the best Bosco defenses? Go stop that guy, or go try to beat Elijah Brown not only once but eventually twice. If you're lucky enough to get to the finals. So that's yet to be determined. It's certainly on paper. Has the ability to do that, but we'll see what happens. I mean,
and let's not forget St. Thomas Aquinas. I think I always read the article about how no high school has more people in the players in the NFL than Aquinas. I think they're always at the top. So them too.
Right. I mean, yeah. And then what Coach Morocco does there at Liberty and Coach Sterling out there at Kahuku, those guys are super good offensively. We've played both those programs before. And we certainly know, what they're all about and the capabilities they have. So this defense has got a, big challenge ahead of themselves. I think we're going to have to be really deep this year to be really good. And some guys are going to have to step up, especially the young ones.
Coach, you spent a lot of time talking about your defense. Let me transition over to the offense. You were talking about another quarterback that had an outstanding career. Let's talk about your quarterback from last year, Pierce Clarkson. 4-star quarterback on last year's national championship team, signed with Louisville. He threw for over 2,100 yards, 29 touchdowns. I think he ran for over 400 yards. That's a lot of firepower coming out of one position, and you graduated him.
Right.
So what do you got coming back for who's taking over the reins?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And, that's where the craziness of the schedule comes in. It's like, Coach, what are you thinking? You got to break in a new quarterback, doesn't have a lot of experience. We're not a big transfer culture type program at that position. That's just not who we've ever been. All of our guys that have won national or state titles have been 4-year quarterbacks within our program. That's something I take a lot of pride in. That shows that we're able to develop guys as they go through. So again, we've got, 4 kids that are all been a part of our program that are kind of competing for that job. We have 1 senior, a junior, and 2 sophomores. So right now it's up in the air. We haven't really gotten into real football, 7-on-7, football in shorts and t-shirts isn't really going to be indicative of, how they're going to play in a real game when the bullets really start to fly. But Caleb Sanchez is a senior. He's got a lot of experience. He played in both Mater Dei games last year. Pierce got hurt in the first game, and Caleb had to play the whole second half and actually led us to the 1 touchdown that we did have in that game. So I got a lot of confidence in him. But I got a couple kids that are right on his heels. So our 2 and 3 right now are probably in no particular order, Matai Fuiava and Ashton Pinnell. Those guys are right on his heels, and those guys are super, super talented, both sophomores. And Jack Nyman is the junior that's right there as well. So all 4 of those kids, I think, are capable of winning football games. If you have a really strong defense, we're going to have a really good kicking game, and I think that's kind of a recipe to win football games, especially late in the season when the weather starts to change. And so I think we have able-bodied guys to go out there. They're high IQ kids, a lot of football savvy. They're experienced in terms of the level of which they've played leading up to this point. So we're going to have to see what happens. And one of those guys is going to have to emerge. And the guy that gives us the best opportunity to win football games is going to be our starter. And we're just going to have to see what happens.
Coach, how about running back? 247 lists 2 3-stars. You got Cameron Jones and Chauncey Sylvester. Talk to us about them.
Well, all 3 of our backs, or actually all 4 of our backs, are back from last year. And we returned 3/5 of our offensive line. So we got some talented pieces coming back. You know, Cam Jones is a recent UCLA commit. I mean, he's kind of a Derrick Henry type back. He's 6'2", probably almost 6'3", about 230 pounds. Big physical type downhill runner. Khalil Williams is another one that's highly talented guy. Jeremy Lenore is going to be a junior. He's the one junior in that group. And then Chauncey Sylvester is another one with holding multiple Division I offers. All 4 of those kids got a lot of run last year, and I think they're going to be able to put us in position with that offensive line that we have coming back to be able to take maybe a little bit of the pressure off of the quarterbacks. You know, they're not going to have to sit back there and win the game with their arms. You know, hopefully, I mean, that's obviously the goal. But we're going to be a downhill, you know, single back, you know, zone-based run team, and we're going to play with a lot of physicality. And, you know, hopefully that alleviates some of the pressure off of some of those quarterbacks until they get into games and get some games and some experience underneath their belts where they may have to win it by throwing the football.
Hey, Larry, one of his offensive linemen is on the high school football all-name team. Check out this name, 6'4", 295, King Large. Yeah. King Large.
And that's not a nickname. That's
going to SMU.
Listen, man, that's got NIL deal written in there somewhere.
Right.
Coach, we talked about the running backs. We talked about Pierce's possible replacement. Sounds like you got 4 outstanding up-and-coming quarterbacks. So it sounds like you're going to, this is me reading into what you just said. It sounds like you're going to be relying on the running game, especially early on in the season, because, you know, you're replacing Pierce, but you're also replacing a pretty talented wide receiver core as well. Right. At least you graduate, I think, 3 pretty good wide receivers. So what about your receiving core? How experienced are them? How much are you going to rely on them to take the pressure off your young quarterbacks?
We're going to have a big reliance on those guys. And, you know, although they may not have been, let's say, the leading receivers on the group, they have a lot of experience. They all played. Daniel Odom, you know, Hayden Elegon, Cameron Jones, Tommy Maher, all those guys have played a lot. We had a transfer kid named Stacey Dobbins come in, really electric slot receiver. We have 2 pretty good tight ends that I really like, you know, in the program, you know, led by, you know, a young man named McKissick is you know, a guy that we've kind of taken over from the defensive side and put him on at the tight end position. So we're predominantly a 10 and 11 personnel team, but we're a big take what they give you type of offense. I mean, we're going to have kind of a menu built for each game going into it. You certainly want to be able to run the ball in the game of football. I think if you were to ask any coach across the country, regardless of the level, whether it's Pop Warner or all the way up to the NFL, you want to try to establish the run game and then see what happens and take what they give you in the pass game. But, you know, it just depends. I mean, if somebody's going to load up the box on us or they're going to try to put some pressure on some of these inexperienced, as people call them, quarterbacks, then we're going to have to throw it. And I have full confidence in not only the quarterbacks, but the protection up front, as well as the receivers we have out there on the perimeter that are going to be able to go out and make plays. You know, again, I mentioned Hayden Elegon, Cam Jones, Madden Williams is a young guy that's going to be a sophomore in the program that's, you know, highly talented. We got another kid named Owen Tomich. There's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They may not necessarily be household names because of the kids that graduated and moved on, but, you know, nobody better sleep on these guys. We're really had a lot of success in passing league. We won a tournament back in May, you know, which was, you know, a lot of really talented teams. We got to the semifinals in this last tournament, and we got one more this weekend. Hopefully we can go out there and show out well. We definitely have talent at the receiver position, quarterback position. But again, if you just take a look at the guys that we have coming back, heavy in the running back room, 3/5 of the O-line returning, you know, a solid tight end that can play in line, or we could spread them out and do a lot of things that we did with Mateo last year. We got some talent. It's just a little bit unproven, and they're a little bit unrecognizable in terms of their names. But I think hopefully by the time we get into the season, get into the league portion, the conference portion, maybe into the playoffs, these guys are going to start hitting their strides, and we'll be a pretty good football team.
Coach, one of the most memorable experiences I had last year at that first Matter Day game was when you let me attend your team mass.
Mhm.
And then after the Mass, you gave a nice speech to the whole team about the Brotherhood and what it means to be a Brave. If my kid's in 8th grade and he's looking to go to Bosco, give me your pitch. Tell me what you tell him about the Brotherhood and the school and what it means to be a Bosco Brave.
Right. Well, I mean, you caught me on one of my most favorite moments of any game day. I'm not a big pregame speech. I'm not a big halftime guy. That's just not what I do. Where I choose to address my football team is at the conclusion of Mass. Father gets up, he gives the homily. We do, all of the communion, and everyone goes back down. When he wraps Mass up, I come to the front of the altar and I talk about the theme of the night and what we're trying to accomplish. And a lot of that is based on what we have been taught as Salesian educators. The Salesians of Don Bosco are the ones, that are the owners and operators of our school. We're not a diocesan school. We're a single owned institution by the Salesians here, like from Don Bosco back on the East Coast. Very similar in the philosophies of the educational practices that we have. And I could not be a bigger supporter of all male formation of education. And the Salesians give us an opportunity to do that. We're a very small school. We only have about 800 students as a whole. So that's kind of on the small side of things, but I take a lot of pride in trying to build a culture here with a big diversity of kids. As you probably saw, we have every make and model of kid that comes into our program, whether you're a white kid from Manhattan Beach or you're a black kid from Compton, or LA Watts or South Central, or a Polynesian kid from one of the beach cities. We have so many different types of makes and models within our program, and we blend so well. We're very kind of indicative of the LA atmosphere and the LA climate that we have here, in the greater Los Angeles area. And I thrive in those moments. And if you're an 8th grade parent and you have an opportunity to send your kid in male education is what you're looking for, the development of a young man as he goes through this 4-year phase of his life is something that you're looking for, then we're the one-stop shop for that. And I take a lot of pride. As a product of Bosco, I graduated from this school in 1991. And if I had 2 boys, this is where they would go. I just happen to have girls, so they can't come here. But again, I take a lot of pride in being a, kind of a mentor of young people and trying to help them in their development as they go through, this critical phase of their lives as they're going into adolescence, into adulthood. And Bosco's a great place for us to be able to do that. And I just happen to do it in the platform of football rather than what a normal classroom teacher would be doing. But again, it's a byproduct of the Brotherhood, the culture, the whole system of Salesian education has put us in this position. And that's the reason why I think we're successful.
Joe, the last question I have for the coach is, Coach, this is not exactly a Bosco related question, but I wanted you to give you a chance to answer this question, because one of your counterparts, a mainstay in your league for a long, long time, your arch rival, if I could put it in those terms, Coach Bruce Rawlinson, longtime head coach from Modern Day, decided to call it quits. He stepped down at the end of last season. What did Coach Rawlinson mean to that league out there, and what was your relationship with him?
Oh man, he's the godfather of the Trinity League, in my opinion. I mean, he's a godfather kind of Southern California football, along with, Bob Johnson, who was at Mission Viejo for a bunch of years, Jim Barnes, or John Barnes that was at Los Alamitos, the Harrington brothers. I mean, there's so many, Marion Ansage. There's so many great high school football coaches that have come out of this region. But Bruce Rawlinson was one of kind of the Mount Rushmore of that whole group. And when I started at St. John Bosco back in 2010, I was completely, a no-name. I didn't play collegiate football. I was barely a part-time starter in high school, as a football player. And I kind of looked up to Bruce, and I looked up to the Modern Day program and what he was able to do there. And I said, man, someday if I was to be able to build a program that was on par to what he was doing, I would really have accomplished something. And for me to be able to compete 19 times against him and his football teams back and forth over the 13-year period certainly made me a better football coach. It drove me to this mad obsession to try to play teams across the country and to be as elite as we possibly can be. And I don't think you can do that unless, you have somebody who can be a running mate to you and can challenge you on a constant, consistent basis. And he was that for me. And I am very indebted to Bruce and the modern day program. I don't like them a whole lot. Don't get me wrong. They do things a little differently over there than we do, but I certainly have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And I love having an opportunity to play against them because they will ultimately make you better. It's kind of like when you look at in Rocky 3, when Rocky and Apollo Creed are running on the beach. Well, if you just constantly beat the guy all the time, are you really getting any better? You have to try to be able to chase somebody. And we chased Mater Dei for my first couple of years I was here. And then we were able to catch him and kind of do some pretty good things against him. And then they kind of flipped that over, on us midway through it. And it's been a great rivalry. And I think it's going to continue. It's a very proud program. Bruce has put, his stamp on it. And I think Frank McManus is going to do a really good job there. And he's going to continue to elevate this rivalry for years to come. So, again, I know that's kind of long-winded, but it just shows the impact that Bruce Rawlinson had on not only my career, but, the history here at St. John Bosco High School.
Coach, you opened the door, so I have to ask,
right.
Who's Apollo and who's Rocky?
Oh, we're Rocky, baby. Yeah, we are Rocky. Yeah, we beat the Russian. We're doing everything.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'll let Mater Dei be Apollo.
That's great. Hey, Coach, in conclusion, just want to thank you, as always, for joining us. Looking at the 4 polls that have been released already so far, in one you're at number 3, and one you're number 2. The other one you're at 3. The third, so you got one number 2, and then 3 at 3. So obviously, with this schedule, if you win, go undefeated, or even lose a game, you're going to be right there as always. So hats off to you for really, putting this schedule together. It hasn't been anything like it in the Trinity League. I don't think. Mater Dei schedules a lot of great teams too, but I don't think they've done this. So kudos to you. It's going to be a great season. I can't wait to see you out there at your place. The last game I went to is when you pulverized your sister school, Don Bosco Prep, that one night. But so I'm looking forward to coming back out there and seeing you play Bosco. I've never seen Bosco play there. And then again, I'm gonna be down in Florida. I'll be at your STA game, and hopefully we'll be able to fly out there too to see the St. Francis game, which is going to be an awesome experience.
Yeah, that atmosphere, that St. Francis game here at our stadium is going to be pretty electric. I'm super excited because a lot of people that have national interest are going to be at the game. Hopefully, if we're fortunate enough, both teams are going to be. We're hoping to be undefeated, which would make it even much bigger. Yeah. But go back to the polls. I mean, I think we're ranked probably pretty fairly accurate. I losing as much as we did. I know people say, well, you're the last year's champion. You need to be. No, I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a lot of really talented people that have been able to shrink the world of high school football down to be pretty accurate. And, and I know a lot of teams out there are lobbying to be ranked a little bit higher. And my advice to them would be, well, then you need to go out of your comfort zone, and you got to start going to play these teams. We talked about Georgia. I'd love to see some Georgia teams come to California, or even some Texas teams to step outside of that Texas bubble to go play some teams across the country. And I know that there are some barriers and there's some things that prevent people from doing that. I do by no means and taking shots at people, but I think if you want to be in this conversation, you have to welcome them in, or you have to go try to find an opportunity to go test your team's skill set against those guys if you want to be ranked. And like you said, Joe, whether you're 2, 3, 4, or 5, at the end of the season in December is when they're going to determine it. And if our resume is strong enough and you win the right games at the right time, then we'll be in that conversation.
Well said, Coach. Guys, if you've enjoyed this conversation, and I know you did, because if you're a football fan with a pulse, you love to hear from these prominent head coaches all over the country. And certainly Jason Negro is one of the tops out there. So, Coach, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Larry, you guys are awesome for high school athletics and football specifically. Joe, I mean, you do this all volunteer. A lot of people don't know that. This isn't your primary job. And I have a lot of respect for what you do and how you try to build this thing across the country and connect a lot of really talented people together. And this is only going to continue to grow as long as people are willing to go out there and take a step outside of their comfort zone, go play some people if they feel that they have the squad to be able to do it. And it's only going to make high school football that much better. So thank you guys for the platform, allowing me to talk about our great institution here at Bosco. And come out and watch us. Hopefully we'll give you a good product to be able to see out there on the field.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll sign off with that.
All right, go Braves.
See you guys.